Do the names Achilles, Odysseus, and Hector mean anything to you? Well, of course they do. We could only be talking about the Trojan War, one of the biggest conflicts of the ancient era. Hello and welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to tell you about what happened during the Trojan War. There are many myths surrounding this conflict, so we're going to piece together the ones we think are the most likely. So let us begin. Helen, one of King Tyndareus of Sparta's daughters, was the most beautiful lady in the world. Leda, her mother, was either raped or seduced by Zeus in the shape of a swan. So Helen is commonly credited as Zeus's daughter, while her adoptive father was Tyndareus. Helen had a slew of suitors, and her father was afraid of the others retaliating violently if he chose one. Finally, Odysseus of Ithaca, one of the suitors, suggested a solution to the problem. He offered that, in exchange for Tyndareus' support of his own suit against Penelope, Tyndareus demanded that all of Helen's suitors pledge to defend Helen's marriage regardless of whoever he chooses. The suitors dutifully swore the requisite oath on the cut bits of a horse, but not without grumbling. Menelaus was chosen by Tyndareus. Menelaus was a political decision made by her father. He was well off and powerful. He had dispatched his brother Agamemnon on her behalf rather than petitioning for her himself. If he won Helen, he promised Aphrodite a hecatomb, a sacrifice of 100 cows, but he forgot about it, earning her anger. During that time, Paris, the Prince of Troy, had arrived in Sparta at the kingdom of Menelaus. During his time there, he somehow got Helen infatuated with himself, and during his return, he took Helen away from Sparta. Menelaus was angered, and according to Homer, he and his ally Odysseus came to Troy in an attempt to reclaim Helen through diplomatic methods, but were unsuccessful. Menelaus then requested Agamemnon to keep his word, which required him to support Helen's marriage regardless of which suitor was chosen. Agamemnon agreed and dispatched ambassadors to all Achaean kings and princes, requesting that they keep their pledges and bring Helen back. The Achaean soldiers assembled in Aulis first. Except for King Cinyras of Cyprus, all of the suitors sent their armies. Despite sending Agamemnon breastplates and promising to bring 50 ships, he only delivered one genuine ship, captained by Mygdalion's son and 40 clay ships. Idomeneus agreed to head the Cretan force in Mycenae's battle against Troy as co-commander, which he received. Achilles, who was 15 years old at the time, was the last commander to arrive. A snake slithered from the altar to a sparrow's nest in a neighboring plane tree following a sacrifice to Apollo. It turned to stone after devouring the mother and her 9 offspring. Calchas took that as an omen that Troy would fall in the 10th year of the war. When the Achaeans went out for battle, they had no idea where they were going and ended up in Mysia, which was controlled by King Telephus, son of Heracles, who had led a group of Arcadians to settle there. Telephus, who had murdered Thersander, was wounded by Achilles during the battle. Telephus questioned an oracle, "What will happen to the wound, since it would not heal?" "He who is injured will heal," said the oracle. After that, the Achaean fleet set sail, only to be scattered by a storm. Achilles arrived at the island of Scaros and married Deidamia. In Aulis, a fresh meeting was convened. Telephus traveled to Aulis and claimed to be a beggar, begging Agamemnon for assistance in healing his wound, or abducted Orestes and held him for ransom, demanding that the wound be treated. Achilles declined, stating that he didn't know anything about medicine. Odysseus reasoned that the spear that had caused the wound must have the ability to heal it. Telephus was cured after scraping pieces of the spear into the wound. The Achaeans were next shown the way to Troy by Telephus. Finally, after much travel and confusion, the Greek fleet arrived on the shores of Troy. Calchas had predicted that the first Achaean to step off a ship and walk on land would be the first to perish. As a result, even the most powerful Greeks were hesitant to arrive. Finally, the Philistines' captain Patroclus landed first. Odysseus had duped him into landing on his own shield, so while he was the first to leap from his ship, he was not the first to land on the Trojan territory. Though the Trojans conceded the beach, Hector killed Patroclus in a single battle. Achilles slew Poseidon's son, Cycnus, in the second wave of strikes. The Trojans then bolted for the protection of their city's walls. To defend against the Greeks, the walls acted as strong defenses. The wall's construction was so spectacular that legend has it that Poseidon and Apollo, the Greek gods, erected them during a year of forced servitude to Trojan king Laomedon. For 9 years, the Achaeans besieged Troy. This period of the war is the least well documented in surviving sources, which prefer to focus on the final year of the conflict. Only 10 years after the original landing was the army reassembled in its entirety. This, according to Thucydides, was owing to a shortage of funds. They plundered the Trojan allies and plowed the Thracian peninsula. Troy was never entirely besieged, and as a result, it was able to retain connection with the rest of Asia Minor. The reinforcements kept coming till the very end. The Achaeans solely held the Dardanelles entry, while Troy and her allies controlled the Dardanelles' shortest point at Abydos and Sestos, as well as communicating with allies in Europe. The Achaeans' Achilles and Ajax were the most active, commanding separate armies to assault the territories of Trojan allies. Achilles conquered 11 towns and 12 islands, according to Homer. Apollodorus said that he attacked Aeneas' farm in the Troad area and seized his livestock. He also conquered Linersaus, Pegasus, and many of the surrounding cities, as well as killing Troilus, Priam's son, when he was still a child. It was thought that if he lived to be 20, Troy would not fall. Among the treasures from these cities, Briseis from Lyrnessus was granted to him, and Chryseis from Hippoplatian Thebes was awarded to Agamemnon while trimming branches in his father's orchards. Achilles caught Lycaon, son of Priam. Patroclus sold him as a slave to Aethon of Imbros, who bought him and brought him back to Troy. After Patroclus' death, Achilles killed him 12 days later. Ajax, son of Telamon, raised the Thracian peninsula, which was ruled by Polymestor, Priam's son-in-law. Polymestor handed up Polydorus, one of Priam's offspring, over to him. He then went for the Phrygian king Teleutus' town, killing him in a single battle and kidnapping his daughter Tecmessa. Ajax also pursued the Trojan herds in the lowlands, as well as on Mount Ida. Odysseus was dispatched to Thrace with the mission of bringing back grain, but he returned empty-handed. Odysseus pushed Palamedes to perform better after he was insulted. Palamedes set off with a shipload of grain and returned with it. Odysseus would never forgive Palamedes for threatening his son's life. In retaliation, Odysseus devised a scheme in which an incriminating letter was forged and gold was hidden in Palamedes' lodgings. Agamemnon had Palamedes stoned to death for treachery when the letter and the riches were found. Achaean soldiers mutinied against their leaders at the end of the 9th year since their arrival, tired of warfare and lacking supplies, and requested to return to their homes. Achilles, according to the Cypria, forced the troops to stay. Chryses, an Apollon priest and the father of Chryseis, approached Agamemnon to request the return of his daughter. Agamemnon declined, insulting Chryses, who then prayed to Apollo for vengeance. Apollo was enraged and plagued the Achaean troops. To put an end to the disease, Agamemnon was compelled to return Chryseis, and he adopted Achilles' concubine Briseis as his own. Achilles, enraged at Agamemnon's betrayal, determined he would no longer fight. In the absence of Achilles, the strongest fighter of the Achaeans, he requested his mother, Thetis, to plead with Zeus, who consented to grant the Trojans victory. The Achaeans were initially successful after Achilles' retirement. For the first time since their arrival, both armies assembled in full force. Aphrodite removed the vanquished Paris off the field, ending the combat between Menelaus and Paris. The army resumed the battle when the ceasefire was breached. Diomedes gained fame among the Achaeans for murdering the Trojan hero Pandaros and nearly killing Aeneas, who was only spared by Aphrodite, his mother. Diomedes then injured the gods Aphrodite and Ares with the help of Athena. The Trojans, on the other hand, drove the Achaeans back to their camp over the following several days, only to be halted by Poseidon at the Achaean wall. The Trojans, with Zeus's assistance, burst into the Achaean camp the next day and were on the point of setting fire to the Achaean ships. After Hector torched Patroclus' ship and enabled his relative and best friend Patroclus to go into combat donning Achilles' armor and lead his army, an earlier appeal to Achilles to return was refused. Patroclus drove the Trojans all the way back to the city's walls, where he was only stopped from attacking the city by Apollo's intervention. Hector then murdered Patroclus and stole Achilles' armor from Patroclus' body. Achilles, enraged at the murder of Patroclus, vowed to slay Hector in retaliation. Agamemnon was reconciled to him, and he received Briseis back, unharmed by Agamemnon. He returned to the battlefield with a fresh set of weaponry. He butchered a large number of Trojans and came dangerously close to killing Aeneas. Except for Hector, who stayed outside the city gates to battle Achilles, the Trojan army retreated to the city. Achilles killed Hector, then dragged his body from his chariot and refused to deliver it to the Trojans for burial. Afterward, King Priam came to Achilles' tent in the dark to request that he let the body of his son go so that he could perform a proper burial. Achilles continued to sow chaos in the Trojan ranks, and during one battle, he reached inside Troy. However, at that moment, he was struck by a poisoned arrow in his ankle. The arrow is said to have been fired by Paris. Around the dead Achilles, a massive fight raged. While Ajax kept the Trojans at bay, Odysseus took the body away. The conflict came to a close with one final strategy. Odysseus created a fresh deception, a massive, hollow wooden horse, a revered animal to the Trojans. The inscription reads, "The Greeks give this thank offering to Athena for their return home," and it was made from the wood of a cornel tree grove consecrated to Apollo. Odysseus led a force of warriors into the hollow horse. The remainder of the troops set fire to the camp and set sail towards Tenedos. When the Trojans saw the Greeks were gone, they joyfully carried the horse inside the city, assuming the battle was finished. While some Trojans suggested burning the horse, others decided that it was a testament to their victory. So the horse was kept, and the Trojans began a night of mad revelry and celebration. Unbeknownst to them, an Achaean spy signaled the fleet to come to Troy, while the soldiers inside the horse got out at night, killed the guards, and opened the mighty gates of Troy. The Achaeans stormed the city and massacred the people who were asleep. A massive bloodbath ensued, which lasted all day. Despite being unorganized and without a commander, the Trojans fought back valiantly, motivated by desperation. When the combat was at its most intense, some people dressed up as fallen adversaries and launched surprise counterattacks in the midst of the chaos. Roof tiles and anything else heavy were tossed down on the raging assailants by other defenders. However, the outlook remained bleak, and the surviving defenders, as well as the whole city, were finally annihilated. Priam, who had sought sanctuary at the altar of Zeus, was murdered by Neoptolemus. After the murder of Paris, Menelaus killed Deiphobus, Helen's husband, and planned to kill Helen as well, but was moved by her beauty and threw down his blade and carried her to the ships. Cassandra was raped on Athena's altar while clinging to her statue by Ajax the Lesser. The Achaeans, encouraged on by Odysseus, sought to stone Ajax to death because of his impiety, but he escaped to Athena's shrine and was saved. After that, the Greeks set fire to the city and shared the riches. Agamemnon was given Cassandra. Andromache, Hector's wife, was given to Neoptolemus, while Hecuba, Priam's wife, was given to Odysseus. So ended the great city of Troy. So that is all the time we had today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel and do hit the bell icon on your way out. See you all next time.